last year or something. Won the curriculum or something.
You can load up there.
Huh?
Load up on one.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Like, he actually designed Iron Man. Joe Frederick, the captain of the convict ship.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming out tonight for the March 19th committee meeting. We're going to start off with Education Personnel Committee, and we have revisions to math class in high school and update on the content plan. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Landis. Dr. Gallagher sends us a gift to the superintendent across the street at the leadership conference. So we have to do the first year of finance math division in high school. So I'll turn it over to Kennedy Rad, and then we have the guests here that will turn around.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're fine.
Good evening, everyone. As indicated, we do have 2 agenda items this evening for education personnel. First one is curriculum revision that we'll be starting with. We have Mr. Brad Barrett here from the high school to help us through that conversation. The finite math course is a change of name initially, and then we need a little bit of additional bolstering and revisions. So Brad's going to talk us through that with the changes.
Okay, good evening, everybody. The Foundations of Algebra course was a course we've had at the high school for a number of years. It was originally designed to help students place into credit-bearing courses in their freshman year of college. Unfortunately, in recent times, last year, we noticed that NCAA Clearinghouse flagged the class because we think mostly the name Foundations led them to believe it was remedial. In a sense, it was going backwards from Algebra 2. Which in reality wasn't the case. The whole point of the course was to bridge the gap between Algebra 2 and college algebra. Nonetheless, when we realized that students who deserve the credit might be declined credit at college, we set out to fix the problem. Originally, we thought that a new machine would be the way to go, and just tighten up a few things in the curriculum. But as we sat down as a department, we realized that perhaps we could do better for our students, and I think we did so. So the course that I'd like to present is called Finite Math. And the finite math course it does all those things and more. So the focus of the first part of finite math is simply to teach algebra and geometry skills that they'll need for college, but it focuses on the real world applications, how they'll see it moving forward in their lives. It also introduces a section on trigonometry, and I believe those 3 things alone will succeed in helping students place better for the college entrance exams. I hope to see an increase in SAT and ACT scores as well. But the part we're most excited about is we know that students live in a world of data. And so one of the units that this course focuses on, is an opportunity to teach probability statistics and introduce them to how to make better data-driven decisions and make better informed critical thinking skills and decisions as they move forward into their college career. There's also a unit that's dedicated to financial literacy. We want our students graduating with the understanding of debt and compound interest and the power of saving early so that they can prepare themselves for the future. So that's how the course is a little bit different. It focuses on more of the real world applications and also searches to, or hopefully helps them to see some of the connections to the things they're going to see and experience in the next few years of their lives. So I appreciate the opportunity and the opportunity to present this, and I hope that you guys will support us in helping make this change for the kids that will be better all around.
And just one other point, the Foundations course has been offered for multiple years, so enrollment continues, and then enrollment would follow right over into finite math course.
Yes.
From those who would have registered for Foundations. All right, so Mr. Landis, we're going to take a pause here for the comprehensive plan.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Thank you, Mr. Garrett. When does this course go into effect? Is it?
We're hoping it'll go into effect immediately with your blessing, because it hasn't happened to any of our kids, at least in the recent memory, because once we were made aware of the NCAA Clearinghouse condition, we started moving any kid that there could be a potential conflict into a class that was appropriate for that, for them to get the credit. It's only affecting student athletes, and it's really the clearinghouse. If you have any kids or athletes, you might already know about this. They have to earn a certain number of credits to be able to place into their college athletic program, and for whatever reason, they get involved in their foundations.
So we are proposing for approval and then beginning in August.
Okay.
Those courses, the foundations course, will be defined in time.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw?
Thank you very much. So basically what you're saying is that this was flagged simply because of the title.
So they look at the title and they look at the final exam, the two primary components. And because the course foundation was originally set up to focus on placement testing for college, there were some things like adding fractions, subtracting fractions that our kids learn in middle school. But there was one or two questions on the final exam. But for someone who's going through classes all across the country, I think between the name and just a couple questions on the final exam, I think it just stood out. And they said, oh, I don't know about this course. If they had gone on to the next few pages of the final, they would have realized that it was much more rigorous.
Okay, thank you. And so how many people worked on revamping the program?
Yeah, so it was a full department decision and communication, but there was one woman who worked a lot of hours to pull this all together because there's not really a class that focuses on everything we wanted to. So she pulled resources from a few different places and created the course we really wanted the kids to see.
I think that's great. That you took something and instead of just doing a little tweak to it, you made it that much better for the students. I'd like to think that you added a real life learning experiences there. I could use some of that myself. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
I do love this course. I think adding the real world problems, like you said, I'm sure the number one question a lot of students said is, when am I going to need this in the real world? And so much of this actually gives them a chance to learn about it and see what they're going to do, especially kids who maybe after Algebra 2 say, well, now what class do I take? So it seems like this would be perfect. Do you see it more being athletes that are going to take this class, or is it more just any other kid who kind of wants to know more about math?
Great question. I see it as anyone who wants a more well-rounded, maybe junior or senior year, after they go through the Algebra 2 program in geometry and Algebra 1, they're looking for something. And we do have a financial class, a class that's solely devoted to financial algebra.
Right.
We also have a problem stat class that's devoted only to math. The problem is if you're not strong in math and you take a year of just one thing, I'm hoping this will catch those kids that are going to those like community colleges where they still need to be sharp with their algebra. If you go to problem stat, you might lose some of those skills. So this allows them to still get the most important aspects of those real world experiences, but it'll also give them that background. And it also introduces trig, which I think was a missing component because kids that were going to foundations weren't getting right triangle trigonometry, which is on a lot of SATs and placement courses, just basic stuff, but it's stuff that they need to see.
So this is getting a whole little small snippet of it.
Yep, we're sacrificing a little bit of review on the things that they probably know anyway. We can get help with. Red Zone is a great opportunity for that extra help to go a little deeper.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Quick question, how many students have taken this class on average?
So currently, I can give you the numbers from last year. You have to look beyond that. Probably about 55 to 60 on average. Currently, we have 3 sections. I think we're up to 72 signed up for it. And word has kind of gotten out, not to jump the gun on you guys, but word has gotten out. I think kids are looking forward to it as just a new experience. So I think that may be taking the enrollment up just a touch.
Love it too, for the practical, everyday stuff, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I'm interested in the practical application. You said that if it gets approved, you can start running with it. So what does that mean in practice and implementation?
Yeah, so a lot of times these kids are coming out of Algebra 2, like geometry, and it's not that our teachers aren't doing a good job. Our teachers are constantly looking for ways to make it more meaningful for kids, so don't get me wrong. It's just when you're teaching one of those academic, curriculum bell type courses, it's hard to find the time to maybe supplement some of those, like, for instance, Algebra 2, you might do something where you're shooting a projectile and measure how a parabola, to use a fun word for us, X squared graph might affect like the path of that object. It's hard to find the time when you're up against keystones and those kind of tests. So I'm hoping that it'll allow for that, but like I said, a lot of the real world stuff also comes from that financial and probability statistics. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to work into more stuff, and I know some of the stuff is written into the curriculum, such as like that.
Okay, so for all intents and purposes, we're ready to go with the teacher and the students.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this has been a discussion. I think the first time I heard about it was mid-year last year when we had a kid who was signed up for the course, and somehow through NCAA they said if he takes that, he might not get credit for it. And it was kind of money. So we switched into a problem set, which was a definite, because that was the safest thing to do in the best interest of the child. But we started talking about it immediately at department meetings. What can we do? What can we do to make this better? And honestly, the most cost-effective and easiest way to get it through NCAA was probably just to slap a Band-Aid on it and switch the name. But we just thought we could do better for our kids.
Great news. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. As a finance person and an investment person, I'm thrilled to know that they're going to learn how to do amortization and savings and compound interest. I have accountants I deal with that don't know how to properly figure out an interest rate. That every student can use that in their entire life, from the beginning, investing only as a kid. Not everybody's going to use trigonometry, a sector of them will. Not everybody's going to use probability statistics, but every single one of them can benefit from that. I love the fact that you're incorporating the real life uses of this mathematics. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm hoping we'll get more kids learning exactly what you just said by opening this other avenue.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I appreciate it. I think Ash answered and stated the real life piece. We've all heard it from our kids. I don't understand how I'm going to use that. So I appreciate that as a parent and as a board member as well. One question, I guess, is if I at least infer that you should have a bigger interest in this type of curriculum as a result of the shift. Are we built for that expanded capacity? I'm looking at Katie or you, whoever. What does that look like in your mind? If we have 50 or 60 kids now, do we anticipate 70, 80, 90 kids coming? And how does that look in the classroom?
Yeah.
Those would just be students who aren't taking another math course, like they're choosing this over.
So it'll be kind of one for one.
Correct, it's a shift, it's not a problem. Yeah, it's not a capacity problem.
Yeah, excellent.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, and again, I never would said it, I think just, I'm always talking about how great the administration and teachers and staff of schools going above and beyond the students. I mean, it's just great to hear. It sounds like built a lot of lessons and the direction that we use. And it's great. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to be next and say one more thing. Real quick. I just want to say, here's what you said, that you had one student who this was an issue for and worked with the department to really change it, see that it could be a problem for future kids. And I just want to thank you, just by seeing one kid that this could affect, that you worked with the department to change this. And I think that's phenomenal. I know I have a daughter who's going to be a junior who's taking trig next year, and I wish she would take this class because I feel like this would be amazing to really introduce you to everything. But again, thank you. I think that's amazing as a department.
It's a whole school effort. The problem was diagnosed by the guidance counselors, and the stamp of approval on the plan was put by administration. So I appreciate it, but
Thank you.
I can't take much of the credit, to be honest.
Take a little bit.
Any questions from the public?
So first, I do like that this was originally looked at as a problem for an athlete, but it can be open to other students. But with that said, is this a program that would be available, or class that's available for students that are in, like, say, special education, or in having IEP needs where they're needing extra help already, or is this only for someone that's like maybe on a regular track?
No, sure. Good question. This would be applicable to anyone who would be eligible for any of those other electives. So assuming the student, IEP or otherwise, passes through Algebra 2 or integrated Algebra 2, this would be a perfect path for them.
Okay.
And they would certainly have the support that they would get in any other class. So it would be just for those people or anyone else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you tell us how was the problem identified by the counselors?
So when the student, I wish Tom Overberg were here. Did Dr.
No, I
Brown,
can
he
explain exactly
was the
what
one that diagnosed.
Yeah, when we have a student looking to participate in college athletics, and it's usually flagged at Division II or Division I level, all the Pennsylvania state schools, Kutztown, Bloomsburg, Westchester, they're all Division II schools here that a lot of our kids go to and a good number of them play athletics at. They have compliance officers at those schools who, when kids are coming in to play football or track or whatever, they're looking through the kids' transcripts and they submit them on behalf of the student, and it comes back, sorry, you're missing the credit in that, and they'll point out what the situation is. We've had this happen before, and Brad stated it correctly. It's give or take, hit or miss what the NCAA clearinghouse does. I'm pretty certain that 15 years ago, they made that decision without reviewing one line of the curriculum and just based upon a title of the course, based upon their feedback. So the title was probably the key thing here, but I do believe there was some curriculum review on this one, which is more, and so that's how we find out. We had one kid who got fined. I'm sure that was fixed somehow for that kid, whether he picked up another course prior to entering school or whatever to make him eligible, but that's how it happens.
So can I ask a follow-up? Is it possible that a child could be accepted, but like summer session only, for instance, if this was the math, our old math, was the math that they were given, and is it something like that? Like,
No, it's not, this has, I said student, I mentioned, I understand your question. This is only for student athletes and athletic eligibility. It's it's not that kid's not accepted into the school, can't matriculate. This is specific to student athletes and whether that kid is eligible to walk on the field the first day of practice in college. It's only after 2 levels.
Thanks for the clarification.
All right, so this is one of the things that we need to move forward. So I'm assuming the committee's good with that. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I get the second.
Yeah, that's right. You can stay for the rest of the meeting.
I've already seen the comprehensive plan.
Thanks for the presentation.
All right, we're going to move on to the comprehensive plan, the steering committee summary for the work that we've been doing since last May. And we're going to begin, as we do, with all of our curriculum work with the mission of the school district to prepare our students to demonstrate competencies needed to contribute and succeed in a changing world by building on a commitment to excellence and innovation, by working in partnership with family and community, and by ensuring a quality education for all students in a safe and nurturing environment. So a whole child perspective with academic, behavior, and social emotional. So this year, we are up for a comprehensive plan. So that happens every 3 years. And we have a co-facilitator from West County IU, Chad Evans. So I'll let him introduce and start our process.
I've met many of you through the steering committee over the last couple of months. But yes, I'm Chad Evans. I support comprehensive planning throughout Bucks County and then also Montgomery County. And so I've worked with over 4 years with the school districts in the past 4 years through the state mandated comprehensive planning process. One thing I'll add just about this slide, what I think is really critical is to remember that comprehensive planning is a cycle of continuous improvement. So you're going to put forth as a board, as a community, a plan. That plan for the next 3 years. Things are going to happen, you're going to make adjustments. So I always mention that while things they do end up in digital ink, and it's your best opportunity, you're going to continuously improve over that cycle. This comprehensive plan serves as a bridge between your past plan and your next plan. So you'll see a lot of echoes from a prior plan, and when you do this again in 3 more years, you're going to carry some of that forward as well. So philosophically, it's about this consistency, about building coherence and alignment throughout the process. So really, simply put, there's two things that are critical. Number one is we want to ensure that we have a committee that represents the interests of the community that we serve. This was a very large committee, which was wonderful, lots of representation. We had over 60 participants. That is amongst the larger committee work, so I really want to compliment administration for the wide variety of stakeholders. There are required stakeholders, but they definitely hit the required stakeholders and then some. And then just as a reminder that that is also not just a Pennsylvania requirement, but that comes through federal law. So this comprehensive planning process is aligned to federal law. And as we mentioned, this process involves students, community members, parents, administrators, teachers. And this question of what are we doing well as a school community? So we can be very asset driven. This is not entirely about how we fix things. It's acknowledging the things that we're doing well. And then also representing those things that we think that we can grow towards and we can start to move ourselves forward with. And so those questions are really important. And then ultimately, what we're doing is we're doing a deep dive into some data prior. I really want to compliment the administration here. When I start my consulting and I step in, sometimes there's a lot of required gathering of data. That is not an issue here. They have the data in front of them. They're ready to speak to it. They're constantly looking at that data and making decisions. So that early part of this process, where we start to analyze, where do we go based on the data, the administration here was ready to go with that. It was pretty clear and obvious that they have a good handle on the data available to them. You can see here the timeline we began last spring. It was a wonderful timeline to give us lots of time to make sure that we're gathering stakeholder input. I think the perfect timeline for this work is to begin in the spring, bring that back to the administration so they can start to wrap their heads around what the steering committee is telling them. We have a slide later on that highlights some of the brainstorming that occurs in this process. Sometimes that brainstorming starts to feel like a wish list. Part of this work is refinement, and it's about prioritizing the work. And so there's lots of wonderful ideas that get carried through. Sometimes they're shared with building leaders, sometimes they're positioned for a future comprehensive plan. We're going to start to build some foundations. But this process here gave us a lot of runway to have those conversations and keep coming back to the steering committee for future iteration. And again, as we mentioned, our objectives are simply to begin with a lot of data, stories, and numbers. But one of the things about this process is this is not just about numbers and data the way that we traditionally think about it. It's also the stories that we tell, the stories that we want to tell, and then establish those goals and priorities. And really, to me, the critical component of doing this well is getting into those actions. What do the outputs look like? Because at the end of the day, you can set really lofty goals and percentages, but if your action plans don't align, if the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis in schools and classrooms and your community are not aligned, then none of that matters. So getting at the root is really ultimately getting at those action plans and action steps. One of my favorite framings here, what we want to do through this process is honor our past, so we don't throw away who we were. We acknowledge that there is strength in who we were. We want to acknowledge our present. What are our strengths and assets? But then also where are the opportunities for growth? No one is perfect. And then the fun part of this process, I know people sometimes laugh at me, is we get to design that future together. The goal of the steering committee and the administration and the community is to design that future together.
And that comes straight back to the beginning of the district's mission. So as part of the comprehensive process, we do go through the mission and vision once again to ensure that it's still meeting our needs. And as I read already at the kickoff, I won't do it again. But then also the South Area School District continues to focus on the tenets of full child, full school, full community. So therefore, specifically spelling out, we will ensure that all students access learning in a healthy and safe school environment that fosters success. And we will ensure that learning opportunities are engaging, supportive, challenging for students to grow and achieve both academically and socially. Along with reviewing our mission and our vision, we also looked at our shared values and belief statements. So they stayed intact as well. So we believe our community has a fundamental commitment to educating the whole child. We believe our community has a responsibility to support the education and well-being of all of its members. We believe our students, educators, staff, families, and the broader community are part of a collaborative system that promotes the success of our schools. We believe a focus on our growth supports the development of lifelong learners. We believe all can learn, each at different rates and in different ways. And we believe all deserve the opportunity to contribute and develop their individual potential in a safe, nurturing, and equitable environment that promotes respect for one another. So they form the kind of the backbone of our comprehensive plan. So as Chad said, honoring the past is where we definitely needed to start. So looking at our comprehensive plan 22 to 2025, which will be ending in June, these are just some highlights. It's not an exhaustive list of all of the things, but the things that were aligned to our priorities and our action steps over the last 3 years, from implementing structured literacy, we're working through an implementation of a new ELA curriculum, grades K to 8, increased support for phonemic awareness and interventions, the implementation of our STEEL standards, they're the science standards from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Student Center at the high school, the red zone block that we're talking about, block 2.5, before and after school programs being provided for our students, the renovations that have been taking place, responsive classroom, differentiating the instruction for our students, increased family engagement opportunities, having mental and behavioral wellness specialists to support our students, therapy dogs, common corners, a lot of these things you probably have heard over the last 3 years in some of these meetings, family navigator, board certified behavior analyst, school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports. We administer the Education for the Future questionnaire each December to get additional feedback from all stakeholders. We implement our full-day kindergarten program, our multi-tiered system of support, our framework for how we do the education of our classrooms, translation supports, online assessments, data warehouse, as well as our federal program support, building any additional support, targeted assist, data literacy, inclusive practices, starting work on artificial intelligence, multilingual works for translation services, our mathematical practices, thinking classrooms, zones regulations, our pathways to graduation, mentorships, and peaceful and purposeful conversations. So those are just a few of some of the things that we've done over the last 3 years. And we map this out in many different ways. We get exit tickets from teachers. We have different metrics of how we're measuring the success of all of these things, as well as keeping a matrix on everything that we've done, and then indicating along which action step it was working towards. So very proud of the amount of work that's happened at the district level and as well as the building level. So using that information, we lead right into a review of the data.
As I mentioned, when I came in and began consulting last school year, we get into what does the data culture look like. And the data culture here is very strong. There's a lot of analysis. There's a strong understanding of what's going well, where there's opportunities for growth and evolving, and then how those align to those action plans. So some of the things that we look at, while we do have to, by law, look at the statewide data, we also have strong local assessment data that we can access, and we're having conversations, and that's represented in the full-blown plan as well. We're required by law to look at some additional components, so starting to look at our subgroup populations and equity considerations. We do a local self-assessment against the essential practices, and then we take a look at all of that, and we start to, with that data, identify what we think our big bucket priorities were. And the reality is those same priorities that have been in place, they still made sense as the overarching buckets, but the strategies and the actions that fall within them, those will evolve and change based on the feedback.
And the next thing too, as Chad is saying, that the priorities are staying pretty similar, it's a short time frame. 3 years goes by very quickly, so we won't hit the 3 years until June. So when we started this work, we're less than 24 months into the process of our current comprehensive plan when we're starting to plan for the next comprehensive plan. So it's amazing.
I will add that when I notify superintendents that they're within their 15-month window, they're mostly like, can you please go away? Because they feel like they just got it passed and started to iterate to do it, and I'm already harassing them to begin the process again. So I just want to affirm that.
And that's where you have momentum on the priorities and the focuses that you have. So for our future, we are going to continue a priority of cultivating belonging for all, strengthening mental health supports and services, and enhancing growth opportunities and achievement. We're going to dive into each one of these. We'll do that together.
Sure. So cultivating belonging, the goal by the end of the 27-28 school year, we will increase the sense of belonging among students, staff, and families in our school community as evidenced by perception and participation data.
So there are 3 action plans that fall under this priority. The first one is to continuously evaluate and enhance communication strategies to ensure information is accessible, effective, and timely across the district and within our schools. This includes gathering feedback, implementing new tools, and promoting transparent two-way communication.
Second action plan is focusing on addressing and overcoming barriers to belonging to enhance engagement amongst our students, staff, and families at every level.
And the final one is to identify and integrate opportunities for learners, families, and community organizations and businesses to engage within each school community.
The next goal, by the end of the 27-28 school year, we will increase the accessibility and understanding of social emotional strategies, resources, and partnerships, which will be evaluated for effectiveness through multiple measures.
So there are 3 action plans for this goal as well, this priority. Foster partnerships and explore additional ways to support well-being of the entire school community and communicate district and community resources that provide mental health and wellness supports for students and families.
The second action plan, design and implement professional development opportunities focused on a shared vision of social emotional learning that supports staff in understanding, recognizing, and addressing the mental health across the district.
And the final one, continue to develop and implement initiatives to support teacher mental health and provide ongoing resources and professional development to promote the welfare of all staff.
And then the next goal, by the end of the 27-28 school year, we will grow achievement and reduce achievement gaps that are present, especially amongst our subgroup populations, as evidenced by local, state, and national data.
So the first action plan here is to refine and enhance our multi-tier system of supports framework based on data-driven insights and feedback from stakeholders, ensuring continuous improvement and addressing the whole child. Strengthen collaboration among staff, families, and community partners to sustain and enhance the effectiveness of interventions and supports.
Second action plan, to enhance language instruction for all students by providing targeted professional development and reinforcing instructional language support in all classrooms.
The third one is implement the new K-8 ELA curriculum over the next 3 years, roll it out fully, provide ongoing teacher support, monitor and adjust based on feedback, refine the curriculum, sustain the professional development, and ensure long-term effectiveness.
The next action plan is to conduct a comprehensive review of the K-12 mathematics curriculum, form a committee, evaluate the current curriculum, gather input, analyze data, research best practices, draft and finalize recommendations, and plan next steps.
And the final action plan is expanding internal and external partnerships that will provide additional learning experiences across the district that may include internships, guest speakers, and business partnerships. So this next slide is something that Chad referenced early on as well, that many of you were in the room this evening, also participated in the comprehensive plan. And there were these here that poster board was put up around the room, and each group would go around and generate ideas. So we want to call them a wish list. But it definitely helps inform the direction and also ensure that our priorities are aligned to the stakeholder group that we can then build off our action plans. So all of the things that were generated, and there was quite a number of things generated, kind of go into our SASD idea incubator. So they're the things that we then go back to see, can we bring them into action, can we put them into play? When we looked at the honoring the past, many of those things were in last time's comprehensive plan generation of ideas, and that's how then they became to fruition and handed out in classrooms to support the students. So that work continues and will continue for the next 3 years.
So one of the other components that when people think about comprehensive planning, they oftentimes think about the steering committee work, and I always like to remind boards in the community that there's a lot of work that happens that is not at the steering committee level, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. So one of the requirements during this process is to develop a 3-year professional development plan. And so the goal there is to make sure that all of our staff not only are meeting the required compliant professional development that we have in front of us, but that there's also coherence and alignment with the priorities and goals. And so in a lot of ways, this is a balancing act between, we've identified these priorities. So for example, in this last plan, STEEL's implementation, there would have been professional development for teachers who are teaching science because they're going to be implementing new standards. And so structured literacy is another example of the way that that manifests itself, both through the plan itself and clicking or checking off the box of the requirements for the state.
In addition to that, communication as to how we communicate about the work that we're doing, not only the comprehensive planning process that we're in right now, but also the continued work. So throughout the years, through different opportunities, through meetings here, and also just the things that are happening out in the buildings, are methods of communicating all the different action steps. Emails, postings on the district website, presentations, surveys.
So there are other state required reports. So one of them is the academic standards and assessment requirements. Essentially, there's 2 things that happen with that report. The first is it certifies that all of your curriculum is aligned with Pennsylvania standards, which it is, that your assessment practices are both meeting the requirements, as well as you have local assessments, which you do. And then the other thing that happens with the academic standards and assessment requirements is that's also where it focuses on educator effectiveness to ensure that as a school district, you're aligned to Act 13
evaluating people here, which you are. Would you want to talk about induction?
Yes, and our induction plan, as we bring on new teachers, supporting and helping them in the classroom and providing a 2-year plus experience so that they are successful both with their colleagues in their department and as well as supporting students and families. So the induction plan begins as soon as we bring a new staff member on and continues with mentor teachers, we do needs assessments, we work through that on a regular basis, meetings every month, observations, computations, so that's an ongoing process.
As I shared earlier, part of what happens is there's a comprehensive plan, professional development, and then this part is essentially a checklist to make sure that everything that is required by law, by the state, is met in your comprehensive plan.
Right, so we have yours. Okay, so kind of bringing it all together, I'm very happy that here at Southington, the comprehensive planning process, is a very good portal. And just as reference, there's a lot of things to do in there, but we bring it to life because it's not a plan to plan, it's actually the work that we are doing. So each and every presentation that I know that I'm here connects back to the comprehensive plan, one of the priorities, one of the action steps, and it keeps us, in the path of where we're heading from the conversations that started back in 22, and now for this one from 25 to 28. So overall, it's our intention to, continue working on the plan, stay true to our priorities, and that the outcome of our efforts is growth for all of the community, for our students, for our families, for our outreach, and for our staff, and also for our leaders. So as part of our next steps, we posted the plan back on February 25th for public review. So if anybody in the community can review that and provide any comments. Then our presentation here tonight. And then the final step will be to have it board approved on March 27th at that meeting. So that is where we stand on this communication plan for the comprehensive plan. That's our latest.
Thank you, Dr. Petty-Riley. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Thanks for coming out to join us today. As you all said, this was the third part of the year that this has been in progress. I have been sitting for a few of these meetings, the steering committee, and there's some of the people in this room were here, a lot of staff. I was going to say the boards were helping people drawing on the walls. There's a lot of discussion in here. It was very loud. Obviously, those ideas translated to part of the plan going forward. So I appreciate the efforts. Like I said, we've had our eyes on this for a long time at this point. I don't have any further questions, but pass them on to my fellow board members. Mr. Project.
Thanks for the presentation. No real questions, just thank you for all of our work. I mean, this was a large endeavor, as you said, 60-some people participating in that. Staff, administration, community members, some board members. So it was a large endeavor. The only question that I would have had, but you already answered it, is to the process from where this gets implemented and how that goes on. But it's, as you said, it's an ongoing thing. It never really stops and starts. Thank you for all the work. Looking forward to the next 3 years.
I was a part of the committee and I thought it was amazing. I loved, even as a parent, being there with the teachers and the administration and community members and business leaders to really hear what everyone else thought. I mean, some of the conversations were, well, what do you expect out of our graduates? And what would you like to see out of Southington future residents, and adults? And it was great conversations. And some things were like just better manners. Grow up to be an adult who's just respectful. And what can we do as a community to make sure that they graduate being a respectful person? And there were so many great conversations that we had. And obviously, I think these comprehensive plans work. Like we ended up with red zone out of it, from the last plan. And so many things that are amazing with our district. So I can't wait to see what we get out of it. It's amazing with all those posters, we condensed it into these 3 plans. So I can't wait to see what we continue with. So thank you. I think this was amazing.
Can I defer to the end? Sure.
It is appropriately titled comprehensive plan because of all the stakeholders involved, fabulous job. And it's really, I can see that I'm giving you practical terms tonight, but implementing it too. And thank you So is there a place where we can share or partner or learn from other institutions? And how does that work with PDE?
That's a really wonderful question that no one has asked before. So I would say that I don't spend a lot of time in terms of supporting boards to support LEAs and then obviously present and share reports. But I know that as an organization, the Bucks IU is certainly looking for ways to bring people together. And so I think your question about how we might provide those supports is really interesting. I know that superintendents, what the state does is they put school districts in phases. So, for example, North Montco, they will begin their comprehensive planning process now, really, they're in it through next year. And so what happens is locally, you might have a couple districts who are in the same phase, and sometimes the superintendents will talk about and share those processes. But I would reflect on that question. In terms of the PDE part, their focus is really more on the compliance, and from working with Katie and the team here, you can make this purely about compliance, or you can make this about an opportunity, and I think that they've done a wonderful job here about making this more about the opportunity than just checking the box.
Yeah, absolutely. So often we have plans, but the practical implementations of those plans is key, right? And you do.
And that's where too, with every County IU job, like, finding with all the other directors of curriculum, that is a conversation amongst all of us as to where we are in the comprehensive planning process, but it also helps to facilitate some of the activities that we're doing as well, because we do tend to structure literacy skill standards, and then we collaborate on all of those things that we know that we all need to do, and then we share our resources and what's working so we can do that collaboration. And we do it over to Bucks County as well, so I'm at the Bucks County IU as well for some of those opportunities.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that. So I do have another question. You hit on it a little bit within this presentation. How are the outcomes measured? Quantitatively, qualitatively, I know you have those measures in place, but how, can you just explain a little bit more?
Yep, so I think we go back to the word comprehensive because there are so many pieces of this plan. So even our data presentations that we do on a regular basis would be a component of how we do those measurements. One of the things that I think I rely on heavily is our matrix. That is representing all of the action steps, the priorities aligned. Those things are happening in real time throughout the entire school year over the 36 months that the plan's in place. So some of those action steps might have had, 200 plus activities that happen at district or building level, all different ways, maybe a workshop, maybe a small group setting, but driving towards the end goal of that. And sometimes our outcomes are quantitative, but sometimes they're outcomes. They're saying that we are doing what we said we would be doing and changing practices, having common corners, things like that. So, I think we see that in the metrics in many different ways, but one, for the comprehensive plan, there's not one metric that's going to sum up were we successful in this comprehensive plan. It's breaking it down into those priorities and then action steps and what we actually were able to accomplish.
The one thing I would add to that would just be that sometimes the trap is you want to have a metric heavy at the goal, and your administration will spend more time aggregating data to justify a percentage increase. Whereas if you build that outcome at the action step level, at the action plan level, you take it down 2 levels, you get a better sense of what's not only happening, but how the data is actually manifesting as a result of this output. So as a recommendation, if you were to write a metric-heavy goal, you spend much more time collecting and aggregating data, which doesn't actually tell you whether the thing you said you were going to do happened and how effective it was. So the goal here would be to have those metrics at the action plan level, not
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Wow, that really is a comprehensive plan. Very nice work. I don't have any questions. I can't think of anything you missed. So, thank you.
No, there's a couple things that have been asked and answered. I sat in the last one 3 years back. It was great. I like the honor of the past. It was interesting to see the work that was done then, decided by people much like everybody in this room, and that came into play, the full day K to how we're supporting kids and moving them forward. I really like, I guess, as a board member, looking at what are the 3 strategic priorities. 1, do they honor the past? Do they build off of that as a cumulative process? I think the answer is clearly yes. 2, in our society and our community today, they seem very fitting. And I think the thing that was very impressive is they all interweave to each other. The emotional supports, the ongoing support, the academic excellence, and giving that sense of belonging. To me, that's a sense of community here in Satterton. I think that's great for kids. So, job well done to all those participated. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the second that, I see a lot of things that are kind of pulled from the last one into this one. And the things that we know we really need to help children with, the mental health issues that we're dealing with. I think nationwide is just something that I don't think we can really overestimate how important that really is. And that we can take the time and set this plan up so that at least we are surely working towards that and not just seeing the status quo. The communication, okay, you guys have we have a couple things we're doing now. We're already doing a lot of things that it says that we're going to be working towards in the next, this next comprehensive plan with the emails in particular. That's going out now. Are we going to increase the number of those? And do those go out in multiple languages? So I know that we have a lot of parents that would prefer to have these emails. That's something that's happening. I know I spoke about that before.
Yeah.
And is there any kind of follow-up with those emails? Maybe we can kind of get an idea of where you're going with those and trying to get these parents involved, especially when we're trying to work with parents who may be struggling with children that have, some type of disability or something, and it may be hard for them in general. Really let them understand that we are here and we have these plans, and we would really like your input. So we kind of see where you're going with that. Let's see here. And again, it's just kind of picking on, you've done this with so many different districts, and you're kind of bringing that knowledge. As far as that communication, that's something that we're really trying to do. There's a lot of people here in this room that are concerned about our ability to really communicate with the community. Is there something that you're seeing other districts do that maybe in particular we're not missing? It may not seem like something that's that important, but in this community it really is. Do you see anything that they're doing that maybe we can change here?
Before we go on that, I'm great, let me share. And to your point, well taken that, communication is multifaceted in this comprehensive plan. One is our first action step under cultivating belonging. So we have it as a continual focus that we will be working through. But then also as part of the comprehensive plan, we have a requirement for each of those action steps to have a communication plan itself. So one of our action steps is communication with the communication plan. But let's add.
All I was going to offer very diplomatically is that if you hit the nail on the head that every community is different. So if I were to say to you, I've seen this very effective here, the truth is that you can't often take those practices and dump them in your community. I know that you're already doing a lot of the things that a lot of places are doing. They're communicating often, they're communicating in different means, they're exploring ways to make communicating in other languages easier for teachers to do and easier for parents. So removing those frictions as best you can. So that's the diplomatic way I answer that question. But it is a strength.
And then we'll continue to have a focus, because it is one of our action steps. So it's not just the component of communication. We actually have it still as an action plan for us.
Well, thank you very much.
I'll let Mr. Wilson have the last word, but I just want to take a moment to publicly thank Dr. Kenny O'Reilly and her team, her supervisors, Dr. Franz and Fran, and Mr. Selewski, for amazing work, and you, Chad. This represents thousands of hours of work for that team and for everybody who pitched in, dozens and dozens of people. And those of you who participated, we're grateful for your participation. No matter how small, it might feel small, it might feel huge times, but it does matter, and it does help us lead our district forward. So thank you, everyone.
So that's my first 2 points, just to thank everyone. And this year, the board did want to expand the actual committee. And I thought it was very well done. I thought there was great input. I was humbled because I thought I had the least amount of knowledge at times when I hear our teachers and administrative staff that when they come and we start talking about it as community members, as parents, as business people, we got so much insight from it, and I think everybody else did too in the community. And then we got a chance to add what we saw from the opposite side, and they were very, very open to hearing that. The professionalism that we have in this district is unbelievable. This is my second time, and Chad, the second time I've seen you, I applaud your professionalism in a very tough crowd, in the sense of that it's 60 people, and get 2 minutes sometimes to talk on a topic, and did a great job of corralling these facts together, and it was great. And I do appreciate that all those words, when I look at it, when you look all over this room, and ideas, that we go back and use them. It's very important that we do that so that everybody's thoughts are in there. The last thing is, we talk about a comprehensive plan, and we talk about this elephant that we have called Southampton Area School District. We have 9 buildings, we have 6,000 students, we have 600 plus teachers. To get something together that is comprehensive and that we can follow, it does take organization. It does take looking at the data, which my last point is over the last 7 years, this is probably the 3rd time I've said this in the last 2 months, that just how we use our data. We use our data. It is there to see what are we doing right, and then where do we have to correct it. And we all know what a plan is. It's something that's going to change because things don't go perfect. We have students that come in every single day differently. We have teachers coming in just a little bit different every day themselves too. So the plan is phenomenal. Again, it's my 2nd time to go through it. And I have thought to all that Dr. Hayes said, just amazing. Thank you.
Questions from the community? Yes.
Excuse me, I was wondering how the community members on the committee were chosen. Were they invited to participate, or did you solicit interest from the general public?
Over the course of time, we asked different community members to participate. What is a common corner? So a common corner is, and this is Lila, please feel free to jump in, but in our classroom, sometimes students need a little space to go to, that if they're not feeling ready for learning, that they can go to that space, maybe read a book, maybe have a little fidget toy, and just get themselves back into maybe that learning, position that they need to be into, to help calm, their senses down. Mrs. Lyra, do you want to add anything to that?
So who manages that?
Yeah, you did a good job.
A separate teacher?
So it's taught. So at the beginning of the school year, teachers teach how to use the calling corner in their classrooms in an appropriate way. And the key is that students are staying in the classroom, so they're regulating themselves with the tools that are available in the calling corner while they're still in the classroom listening to instruction. And there's typically a little timer, a visual timer. They're taught that you can only stay in the calming corner for a couple of minutes, and then you need to return to your desk or wherever instruction is happening. So it's really managed in the classroom by the students and the teachers who are in there.
And they self-manage themselves about coming back to class?
They do. They don't ever leave class, so they're always still there receiving instruction.
So how many times a day are you allowed to learn?
Different teachers may set up different expectations, so that may vary classroom by classroom.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great job of facilitating chat too. I really appreciate the discussions that occurred. When we're going through the plan, we talk about preparing our students for the future. So technology and all that. Can you get a really good answer when I ask that question? I think probably people will benefit from hearing how is this plan keeping our kids on the cutting edge in terms of being prepared for the new technologies and tools that they'll have as they move up and out of the system.
Yes, thanks, Mitch. In the comprehensive plan, the priority for growth and opportunities in academic achievement, those action plans are written broadly and are encompassing of technology advances. One example that we spoke about in the subcommittee work was artificial intelligence and how that's going to play a role in the future of our education of our students. So therefore, with the action step about language instruction, that's very broadly taken and will be inclusive of our work with AI and other technology tools that will come up.
What was the one item, equity considerations?
So the state requires every school district, when you're doing what's called a needs assessment in the portal, so this is a requirement, to look at all of your state assessment data, so your future ready PA index, and your local assessment data for the federally required subgroups. So looking at economically disadvantaged, looking at students by racial demographic, looking at students who are identified with a disability. So that needs assessment requires us to look at those subgroups, look at the state data and then the locally available data.
Yes, in the back.
Well, before my question, I just wanted to say, one of my kids, actually, part of their IEP, they utilize the Calling Corner, and it has helped them immensely as they've grown accustomed to it through the last year or so of using it. So I do definitely appreciate that being an option and a tool available. Everything I see here and on this slide and here, this is exactly what I think of, when I think of Satterton and what we should be and how we should be leading. My concern, though, is a lot of these things are now in the crosshairs of the federal education department. We have, with a secretary who doesn't even know what IDEA is. With these things in the crosshairs, I know the state will be able to step in and help support these programs, but with the federal government possibly targeting these programs that would be part of this comprehensive plan that help and improve our children's education, how will the board step in and say, I don't care what the federal government is saying, this is critical to our community and our community's needs, especially when we do have people, shouting out that, DEI is horrible, but this is DEI to me, How is the board going to support this when it becomes a problem to the Fed? That's my question.
I think equality is what's worked into this, and giving kids the fair opportunities and resources that they need. I disagree it's necessarily DEI. I don't think the board, I think we have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. I'm not aware of any federal changes right now or any federal monies tied to any of the programs that's going to impact anything we do as part of our comprehensive plan.
No. For example, addressing language barriers. We have an executive order that English is the official language. Will there be a problem with us working within the community to address these language barriers when we're getting told from the top, well, you only have to follow English?
Well, English might be the official language, but we still need to be able to communicate with the parents and the students. So I think we try to utilize the resources we have in order to make that connection. I don't foresee that changing.
And English as a second language is a general education requirement in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Thank you again for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for joining us. We do need to move this on for vote, so everybody is good. Great. All right, that ends the committee for tonight. Thank you.
Heading out, Fran.
Let's see.
He's got Dr. Friends in it.
Just sit somewhere.
I did 100 squats today.
I'll do it. Katie,
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Last month at our policy committee meeting, we took 6 different policies forward to the first reading. So as I stated then last month, we're working through really changes in the school code and changes in state law that we have to modify our policies to accommodate. We have another batch of those tonight. So again, the only reason we're making these changes is because state law has changed. And so we're adopting the changes to the school code. The legislature was active in 2024. So there's 7 more policies in the pipeline. The committee meeting tonight, we're going to review 3 of them to have the most substantive changes. Those will be 4 other policies that have really tiny changes, just minor term changes that will appear at next week's board action meeting. We're going to discuss the 3 that have the most substantive changes tonight in committee. All 7 of them will be on next week's agenda for the committee to review. Again, we look forward to such minor changes that are in the interest of time, bringing forward these 3 committee tonight. The first of those is first reading of policy 202, eligibility of non-resident students. So we have had this policy for many years, and we do have students who attend our schools who are not residents of our schools. And the way that works is very often the child will be living with, not be living with a parent, will be living with an extended family member, and those families have to file what's called an affidavit of guardianship to prove that they have a local guardian. And when we contact parents, we say parents and guardians, those are your guardians. So annually, they have to file documentation with us that says they're serving as the guardian of that child. What the state did in the school code last year was they added some language to that law under Act 67, and it really adds some language that codifies terminations when a child, the proof of eligibility is not valid, and the district can disenroll those students. That would be a very rare exception. But and this policy will codify that under Act 67 and in the regs therein. So the policy is appended there for review. There are some other red lines in there about some other language changes, but again, we have had non-resident students that gone to school in our schools for decades, and this is just cleaning up that policy, making it consistent with current state law.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear this because we want to educate every student and child in our district, and including those ones who may come in the middle of the year because there are those extenuating circumstances. I just want to reiterate that a lot of these policies come from the state, and then for the state, they are Pennsylvania School Board Association will draft the policy according to the state law or revise it, and then it's available for all the districts in the state. And that's our process.
Yes, we rely on the Pennsylvania School Board Association, PSBA, and also our local council to help guide us with these policies. And so each one of them you'll see usually about a dozen legal references at the end. Those are all referring directly to state law, and that's part of what we rely on PSBA's guidance.
So just out of curiosity, do we have any of these students here now?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We have a number of students every year. Mrs. Lilac and the registration program facilitate these students enrolling. And again, students come from all different circumstances. They might be experiencing homelessness or foster care, or again, living with an aunt or an uncle who isn't their parent, but is acting as a legal guardian. And if a resident is acting as a legal guardian of a child in our school district, that child may
real quick, does exchange students fall under this policy?
So we have a separate policy on exchange students, but this policy does reference exchange students because they can attend tuition free.
Nothing.
I have nothing. No questions.
Thank you. Anything from the community?
Is there any follow-up to go out to the house to make sure they're really doing it?
Yes, there is. We have a home school officer, and there's some school districts required to have one of those as well. So students who are true from school, have attendance patterns, who fall under this policy, we do have checks on those students.
Okay, thank you. Without any other questions, we can move on.
Okay. The next one, again, is policy 805.2, school security personnel, and Act 55 of 2022. First, a couple of years ago, put in the law training requirements and reporting requirements for school security employees, and an additional provision was added this summer about providing a copy of the court order to the reporting departments, and some changes in nomenclature for the places of meeting and reports to. So we have had school security personnel in the school district for over 25 years. We've had school police officers in this school district for over 10 years. And so this policy requires that one school district, all school districts now must have at least a security guard, and they must be trained, and they go through a 40-hour training regimen, and they have to report those training requirements and other trainings that the police officers undergo, as well as our actions with the courts, to the Department of Education and a few other agencies, and we have to do background checks. So you'll see some red lines in this policy, again, updating and be consistent with current state law.
I think Satterton was a trendsetter here, because we did adopt this type of policy many, many years ago. So, and we have some officers here, so thank you for your contribution here. I just have one question. So it mentions a school safety and security coordinator. Do we have any?
You're looking at me.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions?
Wait, I have a quick question. The background checks that I know is in red, we always have them, right?
We do. There's an extra level for the school security employees.
Okay, what changed with the background check?
Nothing changed, it's just a more rigorous
Yes,
standard.
okay, okay, thank you.
Anything from, yes?
Yeah, so as I read this, there's two questions. One is, it only states one officer. Why don't we just put it in the policy, just one, where we actually have multiple already in there, with all the buildings we have? It seems like we're under, putting the policy is what we're, quote, following. We're going above that, we're using more, why don't we state that in our policy?
Right, so the policy doesn't establish for us the number, we have to have the reference in the policy to one of the requirement under the law that every district has to have at least one, or a contract with one, or accept or have an approved waiver with PE. So there's some school districts which are so tiny that have approved waivers. We have 8 full-time security police officers, and that number may fluctuate. We had some, we didn't have as many before, so we're not locking us into any one number. It's simply a regurgitation of the state law, which requires that every district have.
Just seems like if we don't, you know, if we're making sure we got coverage, we have to see, we're going to say 5 to see under the number that we need.
I understand.
The other question is when it says during the school year, so at the last board meeting, raised the issue about extended school year and the other activities that happened. Was that ever talked about by the policy committee of being incorporated into the policy?
It hasn't been talked about by the policy committee, but we are having discussions about your question from a month ago or so about that very thing.
Yes, thank you for your question. It's under consideration. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. I just want to be clear. So with this policy change, we are already in compliance with this in advance, correct? Or I should say, we were ahead of this policy change. Would that be correct? Am I,
I think it's fair to say yes.
what's that?
I think that's fair to say yes.
Okay. Good.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. And we have one more.
We do. The last one is 807, looking at exercises and flag displays. So this policy refers to public wages that our students engage in every morning. There was a change in state law again last summer that added a moment of silence for the anniversary of September 11th. And we have conducted a moment of silence in our schools this year, so on the anniversary of September 11th, school code now states that schools shall provide a moment of silence in observance of that anniversary. So this policy also reviews the standards for opening exercises, pledge of allegiance, the flag code, and the like. And the reason it's before us tonight is because putting in the policy that there's no provision for the moment of silence for the anniversary of September.
Thank you. I think that's straightforward. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Yeah. Anything from?
Yes, not about that particular policy, but Dr. Hay, at the beginning, you said there were 4 other policies that are going to go straight to the board meeting. Can you give us the number, and are you going to post the draft of those?
I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. Yes, I'm going to post the draft of those. And again, there's 3 readings, so that process takes 3 months. And any member of the board can ask if those be moved back to committee if they choose so. And the revisions are so minor, I don't anticipate that, but they do have that.
So, I'm sorry, so they are going to go straight to the board, but they're going to go through 3 readings?
Yes, every policy that we revise goes to 3 readings. So those readings will happen in March, April, and May. So that was a 3-month long process.
On the consent item agenda?
Correct.
Thank you.
I think there's time for anybody from the community to contribute and ask questions or comments. Okay.
I have one.
Yes.
I just want to be clear on this as well, with the understanding that flag code is not necessarily enforceable under the provisions of the First Amendment. So if a student does choose to reject standing for the pledge or acknowledging the moment of silence, whatever that is scheduled, including this one for 9/11, if a student chooses to refuse to participate, they will not be held under any punishment because it is within their rights, correct?
That's accurate, and that's actually right in the policy.
Okay, just make it short.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to go back to your comment last, Dr. Hay. So these policies that were reviewed this evening are first reading, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So when would we be expecting to have a second reading? At the committee meeting in April?
Now, the second reading will be at the March board action meeting.
So you're considering the March action meeting the first reading for the other 4?
Correct.
Thank you.
And the third reading for the 6th one that we did.
Yep.
I appreciate the explanation of the SBA draft policy for the public. Will all 3 of these policies that you discussed tonight in some form go through the SBA draft? And in other words, these policies come from the SBA draft policy. And are there any that in recent years have been PSBA draft policies that the board decided not to go with? Is it a large number, or is that something that doesn't happen as frequently?
Again, we were here last month, I don't believe,
Action?
committee meeting, where I announced that the board is tasked administration with doing a comprehensive review. So there were months where we didn't do any policies, and now we're going through them all. So PSBA every month has a number of recommended revisions. And that's what we're doing.
Okay, so you discuss or attend the rental PSDA?
No, that's not. That's what we're working on.
And as a reference, you could look to other school districts to see their policies too. There's similarities because it comes from the state.
There's some that are easy to find.
And thank you. Did we pass this on to board action? Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to start the operations committee. I'm going to do this very quickly. Mr. Braun right now is trying to test 2 kidney stones. So he was not able to be here today. So I'm going to make this real easy for myself and turn it over to Mr. Taylor.
So we're following up on the projects that South Dakota and Crest. Back in the fall, we approved the care and energy savings agreements for renovations at those 2 schools. During that process, we did say that we were going to do things a little differently with some of the procurement of some of the materials and things we needed, and that we were going to go through proper purchasing agreements to get those done. And so we can bring those forward before we got ready to done with those agreements. So we have most of them prepared now for 2 schools that we are going to have the folks from Site Logic being able to go through them and present to the board what we would need to have approved next week, so we can execute those agreements to get the materials and supplies and resources for construction. Obviously, timing is a little bit critical, make sure we have the time, and also to lock in prices for these agreements. So these are state contract co-stars agreements, so they've all been vetted and everything. There's multiple suppliers that you get some of these vendors from through co-stars. So with the team at Site Logic, we've reviewed those and we're asking, there's a slide that shows what the price is that we're requesting to go through. And then also a number of them have a second price, the second lowest price, but you can see there's a difference. And the administration did a quick review to see what we had proposed back in the fall. And so far, what we're bringing forward actually coming a little bit less than what we had presented back in the fall. So we're glad that in the ones that transpire, the cost is not increasing. Once again, with teamwork with Site Logic, we'll be able to maintain those costs appropriately. So I'll be able to bump in a through the slide real quick, and then we'll have any questions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Damian Sparrow with Site Logic, and I'm the project executive working with 2 projects that Mr. Taylor just mentioned. So to kind of put a punctuation point on what Mr. Taylor said, when we procured all the construction that we did through the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act project approach, there are limits to what we can do, and most of those are around architectural finishes, casework, and things like that. Those are the scopes of work that we decided that we would go out and procure through cooperative purchase. And there's different venues of cooperative purchase. CoStars have them, all sorts of different qualified approaches to use. And when we went out to do that, we looked at it as a valuable strategy because it had several pieces of it that were really advantageous. One, there's a quality contractor selection. So when we go out, we can ask certain contractors to kind of pre-qualify them for pricing. We know they do good work. We know they have the capabilities. We know that they have quality products that they install. The ability to confirm those scopes of work prior to the signature of the contract, which is what Mr. Taylor was talking about us doing, what it allows us to do is propose a scope of work, get the pricing back, review that pricing to make sure that they have the things they need. That's not to say that there may not be changes in minor things, but what it really does is it reduces the risk for change orders or change conditions later because it's a negotiated situation as opposed to the way that we go through the process of public bid where you have a final number and anything that changes thereon without negotiation is a change order. Talk about negotiation, it's directly contracted with the district. So everything we talk about tonight, there'll be a contract that says Southern Area School District contracts with this contractor for this scope and this amount of money. And SiteLogic is coordinating all this. So all those things put together were why we looked at using cooperative purchase. At Salford Hills, there are several different scopes, and I'm going to read down through where it says training. So for soft flooring, Spectra Contract Flooring is recommended. Their recommended award for their scope is $440,000. You can see the next lowest price is over $230,000 higher. For epoxy flooring Durex, somebody we use all the time, a lot like we use Spectra all the time, another quality contractor. One of those scopes of work, there's not a lot of available bidders, but Durex is, their value of the contract is $92,690. Blackboards and Casework Design is the company that is supplying the visual display boards. They're at $166,400 for recommended award. Next lowest bidder was slightly higher. iSign is providing signage at $44,508. Next lowest bidder quite close as well. CM Mike and Love, who I work with all the time, very dependable, providing athletic equipment at $46,849. There was no second bidder for that scope. Really big and important scope is Casework, and Reed Associates is a well-known casework supplier and installer. Their bid and their final number at $553,750 was substantially below the next lowest bidder. And finally, for Salford Hills, the library furniture by Educational Furnishing Systems comes in at $91,382 with the next highest bidder being about $8,500 higher. So you can see just in making sure that we were competing those cooperative purchase agreements, we were avoiding costs of over $400,000 just for Salford Hills. And there's a few more that we're going to bring to you next month for Salford Hills, but not nearly as many of this, and usually there are points to continue to happen. Indian Crest is longer, and I'm not going to belabor this quite so much. Soft flooring is PC Curry, again, great contractor. You can see a big savings over the next lowest bidder, $849,817. Durex, again, for epoxy flooring, $215,383. Again, good savings to the next bidder. Ceramic tile from Suburban Interiors, $221,150 with the savings. The next two did not have other bidders. Same company, visual display boards and iSign that provided for Salford Hills. So we were able to talk to them about, well, if we get both jobs, we get economies of scale, and we work on that, and that worked in favor of the district. So the visual display boards at $249,000 and the signage at $76,792. Lockers, which we have at Crest we don't have at the other project, $162,682 from Robinson Steel, with a little bit of savings with the next highest bidder. CM Mike and Love again with that athletic equipment at $141,295. Comcab is Casework, so we have Reed on both. We have Comcab and read on the other. And those numbers were relatively close. The casework number at Indian Crest is $1,188,274. Auditorium seating by Irwin, another good quality company, $192,696. Decker Way for gym bleachers, $162,580. Some savings over those last two contracts. Finally, stage curtains from Pittsburgh Stage, I believe they worked here before, $78,920. And educational furnishing for furniture systems, I believe that's the same as Salford Hills at $101,643 for library furniture. Here, with all of the recommended award, the next lowest price we avoided costs of nearly $600,000. So you can see the pace to chop around a little bit, and we did that. Next month, we are looking to bring 3 remaining at Salford Hills. Ceramic tile, we expect that contract value to be in the $240,000 neighborhood. Toilet partitions and accessories, about $50,000. Window treatments, about $60,000. For Indian Crest, we have 5 different contracts we'll bring. Wood flooring, $75,000. Toilet partition and accessories, about $110,000. Window treatments, $45,000. Crest gets some residential appliances at $30,000 estimated, and we have a flagpole there too that we're buying through property purchase at about 10. That will complete really the construction procurement for those 2 projects. So part 1 tonight, and for next week, next month we'll finish that. Any questions?
Right.
Good seeing you again. So there are some large differences in pricing, which I expect. But, just want to be certain, you mentioned that the contractors were vetted, excellent. Materials to be used, have they been spec'd?
Yes, they're specified in the drawings and specifications that will provide to the contractors. In the bid scenario, but not public bid, it's basically priced by the cooperative purchasing to that spec, and then we de-scope it, which means we had meetings with them to make sure that they had what was in the spec and understood the conditions. So it wasn't just kind of a price and we took it, it was a de-scope, and sometimes that price changed and dictated who was lowest. But we did that, and that may be part of what you're looking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And just out of curiosity, PC Curry and Spectra Floors, did they bid both projects? Like, is the next highest number the other, the competitor?
I'm just curious. I believe that may be the case. I can't tell you that for sure, but I think that we did have them looking. Sometimes, depending on the schedule, contractors did not bid both. But oftentimes, particularly in these cases, they did. So, more so under the visa subcontracts, we ran into that and here. So, that's probably a safe assumption, although it might not be completely accurate.
All right, thank you very much for your work. Thank you.
No other questions?
I just have a question. I think I asked this about the Valley renovations. Are they still using the lockers at Crest? Like, that's a necessity that we need to spend, school students take their backpacks everywhere, their coats.
So we went through this with the Valley renovation.
Right.
And we significantly reduced the number of lockers
Correct.
at Valley. And what we did is we actually made an appropriate size for those students to use it. So I believe 6th graders, they issue all lockers and they require them to use them. 7th and 8th graders, it's more on to them. I'm not sure if they have a slightly different address, but basically we won't have enough lockers available if the student requires one. But you're right, they're not used the same way as they were when we went to school.
Right.
And I think we reduced some of the number of lockers listed in this building as well. So we have enough available for those students that need them. We reduced it and therefore save some money by not replacing them.
Okay, well, no, thank you. Glad to see we included library furniture. I think that was left off in Valley, and it was definitely needed, and that was like a last minute thing from Ms. Hahn, so thank you. But both libraries are desperately needed renovations, so thank
been with us for years now. You did say that your modeling is process will yield savings. I thank you for the 600,000 in work, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. I think this goes back to what they said. I'm looking at the winning bid versus the second one, and there's situations where one company was the low bidder, they got the contract with one school, they were the second bidder for the next school, the other school, but they weren't given the contract just because we worked with them, right? And it looks like that's, saving us $50,000, $60,000 just that one instance. So it's just nice to see you looking out for the best interest of people in this community. We appreciate the hard work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Questions? I do want to jump in and add one thing. Mr. Spark was very good at showing us the cost savings between the lowest and the next lowest bidder. There's also additional savings that I think we did mention in the fall. By going outside and directly purchasing ourselves through this agreement, it's not only we get the competition saving money there, but also we save money on the additional bonding and markup of going through multiple vendors. So buying direct actually saves a lot of money. And I really give Satellite our credit for really working with us and help us find those vendors. They have these relationships with many vendors. Sure, we have access to list of co-stars and contractors, but they know who's good quality. And so we've saved money multiple ways of doing this and keeping us compliant with purchasing requirements and also with the Character Energy Savings Act. So just wanted to clarify once again. He underestimated some of the savings he did for us tonight.
Can I just go back to one more comment? I like the way you presented this because it shows the price comparison and the difference in what we say. So thank you for that.
So you did say that you were going to go back and say how much we had from originally, what the guess was in the beginning, and I'm not saying guess because there's so much time that's passed. How close did we get to those numbers that we estimated in the beginning?
So Frank Wall and I were looking at it earlier, went back to the presentation for the fall, and I don't know the exact number, it was a couple $100,000 less than the estimates for the fall.
Anything from the public?
I just have a quick question. For the cooperative purchase contract, are we required to use the lowest bidder, like in the PSETA situation?
You're not, but we did. You are not, but we did.
They're all approved state contracts, so we can use any of them, but the right thing to do, obviously, is to take addition for the most money, and they've all been vetted contracts, so yes, we will close.
And I think to a point that was made earlier, one of the reasons that some of those contracts got so close, but they simply, in the final negotiation, the final B-scope, meaning do you have this, don't you have to have a complete package, and you make the schedule. If they just couldn't get to where it was, we looked out for the best interest of the district, and we made sure that they could complete the work, and that's how the jobs are recommended for the board. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just to follow up on Mr. Nelson's comment, what would be nice too on your chart is to have the columns that estimated or projected what that was. That's the real savings. It's not the next bidder. It's what we save off of what we estimated those costs are the real savings.
Yeah, I apologize for not providing that. I kind of knew we were under our estimates. Sometimes we like to say we don't know anything until bid day. But certainly, even more than the estimate was what did we think when we had numbers early before we worked them down, and what was that difference? And that's what Mr. Taylor was alluding to. And we don't have that. That's a good comment.
So the other two questions were there any contractors that are on the cooperative list that we decided we weren't going to use based upon the experiences that we
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. And then the other question is, are these prices locked in?
Yes.
Okay, so
now I'm going to be careful when I tell you this. They're locked in. They're locked into an AIA agreement. So does it mean that somebody couldn't come back and ask you for something? It could, but what we're trying to do is, and I just addressed this with a different district the other night. One, having a contract sets your price. Two, we're trying to get all this stuff relatively quickly. It's when we're trying to get it over a long period of time that you're more susceptible to those tariffs. Because it's an immediate go following the board's approval, that shortened duration between go and ordering and the contract itself provide quite a protection from that risk. So I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to say that myself.
The only caveat is assuming we're cruising next week. Those are only temporarily held by those AIA contracts. Like for the next week, it goes another month, then the price is going to change.
So I just want to clarify one thing. So when we look at an estimate way back when in October, there's a lot of months that went through, inflation has gone by. So sometimes when we ask that question, we're very guarded of what's happened. We do know oil goes up, oil goes down, and a lot of petroleum products, they, especially when you're talking about the building products, it can change. So sometimes it's not on, the actual estimate. It's just sometimes the economy. But I just want to make sure.
Yeah, and smart, we built the budget for these projects, so it's already on target, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
So it's not specific to these items, but it's to Sanford Hills. Just out of curiosity, we used to call them the mushrooms, the concrete pillars in front of the building. Are those staying during the renovations, or are they going away?
Yes, they're being retained.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we need to move this forward. There's. That's it. And now we go to finance.
That's part of
Yeah, you're very welcome.
No.
By the way, I call them the Space Needles.
Space Eagles?
Everybody's got a different name.
That's what we used to call them, yeah.
As soon as you said it, I was like, okay, so that's what you call them back in the day. I call them Space Needles.
Yeah.
The last part of that, guys, get through finance.
Say the best for last.
Now, I'm gonna kick us off while you're spinning up all of some announcements. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 2025 Finance Committee. Budget season, everybody knows it. We've been in schools, we've been in work. Budget season's year-round, there's no doubt. In a school district setting, it really starts in October. It kicks off earnestly in December. Remember, January and February is all about expenses and revenue. It's an educational series, if you will, to understand where does the money go, where does the money come from. As we get into March, April, and May, it really becomes the diligent part of what is needed for the students to be successful. That's what it's all about. Everything else at the end of the budget, the byproduct is the byproduct, but it's really all about finding what do we need to be successful, how do we meet the needs of students that are in different walks of life, and make sure that we can do that. So that's what this is going to be about. Tonight we're going to start to see the first dive into that from a detailed level perspective. We'll start to see where we're at in the budget process. Mr. Taylor and team have done a great job, as you're going to see. At the end of this presentation, you're going to see some of what transpires over the next couple of 3-4 months. In particular, Mr. Taylor, forgive me, but I want to make it crystal clear. You'll see a proposed final budget in the month of April. It is a formality, if you'll excuse the term, where we are required to do that. It does not mean that is the final number. I just want to be very, very clear on that. It's a requirement the district has always met, and the district will continue to meet. And Mr. Taylor will reference that at the end. So, Mr. Taylor, I'll turn it over to you. By the end of tonight, you should have a good idea on expense, revenue, where we're at today, and then April to May, and then we'll stop in June. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. So, if you
paying attention the last couple months, we talked about in generality, our history of revenues, where we, receive money from, where the bills are paid from, and then also in February, we talked about expenditures. Once again, just to give an idea of what it is. Now, this is really looking forward now to next year. And the simple thing is simple math, right? Your expenditures must meet your revenues. If your expenditures are greater than your revenues, eventually you run into trouble. So our goal obviously is to have a balanced budget. For this current fiscal year we're in now, we adopted a balanced budget. So that's the goal again for next year. So even though you'll see at the end of the presentation, we're currently in a deficit, it is a process. We're using estimates. We're putting in there all the things that we believe we need to be successful, estimating what our costs will be for next year. And some of those estimates right now are a little rough to make still. Like some of the special ed costs and charter school costs, until we get further in the year and more bills, we have to project where we're going to end this year and then what we're going to need for growth for next year. Now, the revenue side, once again, we're looking for some more information. Some good news came from the Fed today. If you're the school district, maybe not if you have high credit card debts, but they left the interest rate unchanged. For the district, that is good because it means we earn more revenue on our bank holdings and our savings accounts. The last couple of years, we've been very successful, and by big revenue of multi-millions of dollars, that is less money than taxpayers are paying directly on property taxes. So we look forward to benefiting from that, and we'll watch how that goes as well. We'll have another Fed meeting before our final budget adoption to see what they're forecasting for the next 6 to 12 months to see if we can adjust our budget up for those interest rates as well to help close our gap. So as you'll see through the next few months that our revenue numbers will probably increase and our expenditure numbers we have right now will probably decrease as we get more information and can hone in those numbers. That's just the process. So looking real quick at the local revenues, we have the actual numbers from last year. We have the final budget for the current year we're in now, and then I have a comparison of where we were last year in February to this year. Just so you can see some of the trends. Some of the things are very linear, some of the things go up and down year to year. Now, this preliminary budget over here that I'm showing, the real estate taxes, the reason why there's two numbers there, it's based off of the assessed values now. The lower number is if there's no tax increase, the higher numbers will be projected with the actual index. All right. Now, we don't know where we're going to go with that yet, so that's why I put an exact number. I'm just showing the range that we would fall in. But once again, those numbers will be revised because each month we get new assessment data from the county, and then we update those projections as well. So that is factored on the 97% collection rate, which is a historical average for the district. Looking at the real estate insurance assessment, it's fluctuated quite a bit in the last couple of years. You see last year we ended up with $419,000. The final budget for this year is $400,000. But as you see, we're double last year's collection. So that was a very hard one to guess. Interims are when somebody puts an addition onto a house, buys a new, builds a new house. So they're billed July 1 at one rate, and now their assessment went up during the year. They get billed for that difference in that assessment. So it's hard to tell, even with the construction, what that's going to be. And we have to dig a little bit deeper too, just to see, is there one larger thing or is this more of a trend? So each year is a little bit off, but looking at trends and everything, we are starting with a projection for next year of $542,000, even though that's already close to it now. When you look at the prior year, there's some fluctuations. That's a conservative number that, once again, might be revised as we get more information on construction and activities and markets moving forward. Earned income taxes, I've cautioned the board and the public the last couple of years to be cautious. This number keeps growing, and I keep being surprised at how much it's growing. Even when we had calls from credit rating agencies that do credit ratings of municipalities and school districts all over the state, even all over the country, are surprised at how much it keeps growing. So cautious, but I think, right now, we're up to 10.8 based on trends. You see last year we ended at 10.3. We got 10.5 budgeted for this year. And we're $500,000 ahead of last year's pace, so you could suspect that we're going to end at probably about 10.8 this year. So once again, as we get closer to the end of the year to see the numbers as they come in the last couple of months, it's possible that number can be revised as well. But I just want to take a cautious approach until we see the next couple of months to make sure that things don't trend and nothing dramatically changes with that, especially with uncertainty in the marketplace. Delinquent real estate taxes is an interesting number. The numbers, if you look at last year at the end of February now, are quite low, but then at the end of the year it came up to 800,000. That has dropped in recent years. It used to be up over 900, even $1 million. I actually look at that as a good thing that that's going down. It means that people are paying their taxes on time. There's less delinquent taxes to collect, which is a good thing overall for the school district and the residents of the community. So 800,000, I think, is a pretty safe number to budget there right now. Per capita is usually pretty stable, changes a little bit here and there, 2,000, but nothing dramatic, so 280 is kind of some of the standard. The real estate transfer tax is another one to watch. That can go up and down because it's not building off of each year, it's how much property is sold in that year. So it could go up, it could go down. We already have last year's collections, which is a trend that's surprising a little bit because last couple years it been going the other way. Obviously, interest rates have started coming down, so maybe that's helped, but also we got to analyze that a little bit deeper. Is that a trend of, properties just selling for more, or is that just you had one or two big transactions that did that? So that's more data that we still got to dive into, once again, follow these trends over the next couple months to see, is that number, right now I think it's a safe number to go with, but once again, can we revise that number upward as we go through the process? Earnings on investments, this is the big one that's really helped us the last couple of years. Prior to 2 years ago, we had not even earned $1 million in interest in any year. The 2 years prior to that, we were at $150,000, and then we jumped up to over $1 million. Part of that, a lot of that obviously is the district rates, all of it's the district rates, but also having very good partners that we work with the district and banks. Finding partners that are willing to maximize those investments for us and working very closely with those partners. So we give credit. So nobody wants to come and hand out extra money and then work with them and ask them for it, but they'll be real quick to drop the rate, not think of that either too, right? So we've got some really good partners we've worked with and maximize that. Once again, I think that's a safe number, but we're very cautious about what's going on with the Fed. Over the last 18 months, there's lots of projections that the rates would drop a lot faster than they have. Like I said, fortunately for the school district, they haven't gone down that fast, but people's credit card debts are probably screaming at me right now for saying that it's good that they didn't lower rates. So that's the local revenues. The next thing I want to show is the Act 1 index. We've talked about this a number of times. The index for next year is 4%. Last year was the high at 5.3. But you'll see the forecast, this is from the Independent Fiscal Office of the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. They project out, it's based on 2 year averages of state wages and educational expenses. So looking at the trend, the thing is, well, it's good that that's the index and you're limited to that much tax increase, but it's also bad that you're limited to that much tax increase. So if you have the need to raise revenue, it limits your ability to go forward. So good for the taxpayers, doesn't give you much flexibility as a school district if you need it. So that's why we've got to make sure that when we're adopting a budget this year, that we're fiscally responsible and that we're not just looking at 1 year at a time, but we're looking going forward and making sure that we're not kicking stuff into the future that we really need to be doing. Right? So we need to make sure that we're responsible for our budget adoptions, but just looking at that index. Now, some people think that the index is a max. It's not necessarily a max. It's the Act 1 index. There's actually school districts that have an adjusted index, which we don't, but that's usually for poorer districts. But we all have the ability to do something called applying for exceptions to the Act 1 index. And the big ones for the years have been for your cost to exceed the index for the pension expense that was growing rapidly, but also special ed. The special ed growth, especially here, is growing much far faster than the Act 1 index. So each year the district has the opportunity to apply for exceptions and exceed that index. What we've been doing is we've adopted the resolution you're probably familiar with, in the last few months, where we say we're going to stay within the index. So we are agreeing to not exceed the index, but just want to make people aware that there is the ability to go higher if you apply for it, but the district's try to really maintain the line and not exceed that index. The governor's budget proposal, basic and special ed funding, very modest, minimal increases compared to what we had seen for a number of years under the Wolf administration. For us, it's a little bit higher than the total amount for the state, as far as percentage-wise, but it's only 1.14% increase, 141,000 basic education. While we're appreciative for every additional dollar we get, we really could use additional funding to help the state. And then special education, while it's up 4.77%, it's only an increase of $193,999. That is very minimal for the increased cost. Once again, we're thankful for any additional dollar we get from the state. That just once again shows our increase in expenditures is well north of $193,000. So once again, that gap is encouraged by the local taxpayers, unfortunately. So we are pretty comfortable and confident that the budget will pass through this, but you never know until the state goes through it. Once again, not significant increases, so we are budgeting the full amount at this time. If there were increases of $700,000, $800,000, or $1 million, we'd be a little more cautious with the unknown. Obviously, this is at risk if the governor's budget doesn't go through, and they cut education, but I would not expect any significant cuts. I think if they did cut it, by half, you're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. But just so the board's aware, we have that the governor's proposal in the budget at this time. Federal revenues, pretty flat funding for federal revenues. You got title funding, which is the bulk of it, and our access and medical assistance funding. Some cautions here. We did this, and this is reflected already in this presentation. Title I, we did just get a funding adjustment, reducing our funding for this year by $50,000, which I reflected in this budget. We won't get those numbers. Usually it's in April or May. Usually we get our funding allocation from the federal government. So we're just going off the assumption that we are going to get the same as we're getting this year. Usually it's pretty close. So I just want to make that aware. I was talking with the, conference with some of the fellow business managers and asking about everything going on in the media right now about the federal government and everything like that. And they're pretty comfortable that Title I and Title IV are pretty solid. The ones they're not sure about is Title II and Title III. So unfortunately, the big numbers are expected to survive, but nobody's heard of any specific cuts and programs. It's just people speculating things because there is uncertainty. They don't know. But we're keeping them in there because we're pretty confident we're going to be able to, once again, the big numbers look to be pretty secure. Now we're getting a little more detail of our expenditures. So our expenditures by function. So you can see last year's actuals and our budgets for this year, what we are here to date, and what we're studying out. Like I say, I would caution you, especially if you start out now and then we go to the proposed final budget, which Mr. Keith said is a requirement of law that you presented. It will not be that close to the final budgets we're doing in April, and we still got another 45 days before you're really adopting the budget. But you can see that total expenditures are $164,000. That number will come down, like I say, when we get to the final budget. But right now, that's 101, almost 102 million of it is instruction, okay? And you have support services at about 48 million, operations and non-instructional services, a little over 2, facilities, acquisitions, construction. This is a little bit about, probably confusing with all the construction, but it's only 40,000, but this is your general fund budget. So all of our construction is being done through bond proceeds, borrowings, and that's the capital projects funds. So I didn't want everybody to think I'm only spending 40,000 on construction each year, but in the general fund budget, that's what we have in there. And then the other expenditures and financing uses, you'll see the budget of $11,900,000. That is primarily our debt service. Okay, you'll see it's a little bit lower than what we had last year and going forward. So we would break down a little deeper, digging into the function of instruction. You'll see that almost 2/3 of it is your regular programs. So we talked about special ed, we talked about regular instruction. You'll see that 64 million of it is regular programs. A little more than half, over 34 million is special programs. You'll see that's the number that really keeps jumping year to year. This year was really good. We did a really good job working as an administrative team to try to reduce those expenditures. We keep looking for ways to do that, but that is a growth area. We see vocational education and other instructions and adult education programs all pretty stable. Digging into support services, you'll see that you have $48 million, $7 million of that is student. So increase rate of about $500,000 in the current year budget. Instructional staff, support services, a small increase with the current year. Same thing with administration, pupil health, and business office. Operations of maintenance and plant services. There's some increases in there for preventative maintenance that we need to maintain our facilities. You'll see the increase, and then also student transportation services. So really our operations department and student transportation services are really the bigger support service functions. And then you have central services with a small increase in the same thing with our support. So we went through the expenditures by function, which is like the area. Now, when we talk about object, we're talking about the same total dollar number, the total same number of expenditures. When we break it down a little bit differently, an object is the service or commodity part. So instead of where it's being spent, it's what it's being spent on. So you can see that, once again, a significant portion of the added salaries and benefit lines together, you're over $108 million. Once again, we talked about this last month of February, that 2/3 of your expenditures are salaries and benefits. So you can see the growth there. And then professional technical services, you'll see that there's a significant decrease in the budget compared to what we had in actual expenditures last year. And that has a lot to do with us hiring our own staff for special education, bringing those staff in-house, which greatly reduces the contracted services and also the IU services, which would be under the purchase professional technical services. So if anybody was saying this, they get over $11 million last year, why are you only budgeting over 8? A lot of that is the shift of the services to our own staffing, which also has bumped up our salaries. Purchase property services, there's an increase in there, which once again we'll nail down some of those in the next few months. Other purchase services, that's going to be your transportation in there, charter school expenditures. Those are also, when you look at the $23 million number, that's a lot of it. It's the charter schools, your transportation services. Supplies, that's a little higher than the budget this year, property the same, and then other objects and other use of funds. The numbers look a little out of whack, and that's just with our new debt service. So your debt service principal payments are under the other use of funds, and the other objects is your interest payments. So depending on how the makeup of your debt is, you'll see that the numbers are pretty close to having together from year to year, but they've shifted in the function depending on the interest or principal in those years. Now, once again, hate to harp on special ed, but we just want to show the impacts we're having. So this is, once again, all these objects just under the function code 1200, which is special education, special programs. And you'll see, once again, the salaries have gone up, and you'll see that we increased quite a bit, 2.3 million this year in the budget, and then you'll see that we're increasing it more over the actual 24. That's because of all the people we brought in-house, which there's a net savings when you see that big decrease in the contracted services, right? So that's just demonstrated there that really is a lot of special education programs we're working on, which is a big help to our budget this year. And then also you'll see the great reduction in the purchase professional tax services here. So you'll see that was $9 million last year, we're budgeting about $4 million. Also going to save a lot of money by not paying these contracted services. Other purchase services, there's an increase in there compared to the regular budget. And then supplies, actually a little bit of a decrease in the budget. And other objects is pretty similar. Benefits, once again, is a big number that we go over, and I want to show some big increases, and you can really see that the PESER's retirement keeps going up. Now, the rate of growth has slowed down, but still it's a very significant number. You're still at 34% of all solid salary dollars. So the more salaries go up, your PESER's pension costs go up. But the other thing I want to draw attention to is the group insurance, health insurance. We have a budget increase of over $1 million currently in there, and that's just because, health insurance costs and claims and everything like that. Hopefully that's a number that we can dial in and reduce as well, but to show you where some of the growth is coming from currently. Go back to the purchase of professional technical services. Once again, I talked about how we had a decrease in the budget compared to actuals from last year. You'll see that really the IU services, the second line down, the first one in blue, $700,000 decrease. And then you'll see other professional services, $2.8 million decrease, and you'll see that really it's over a $3 million decrease compared to last year's actual expenditures in the budget line. So once again, just honing in on the team work that the administration is working together to try to find a solution to still provide high quality services that our students need, but try to make it more affordable. Other purchase services, this is what I was talking about, student transportation. You can see right now we got about $600,000 increase in there. There's lots of challenges with the student transportation. The costs are rising rapidly. We're very fortunate that we have a good partner in Transportation Services Incorporated right down across the street from us. But there's lots of other providers that are paying significantly more to drivers, which, because it's a driver shortage, which really puts the, makes it for them as well. But the costs are going up. And because we have driver shortages, sometimes we have to use other outside agencies at an increased cost. So that's something that we will have to tackle with the board in finding, is there a way to make TSI able to provide services a little bit more of a cost, but at lesser cost than outside services. So that's something that we'll be bringing forward later. Insurance, you see insurance keeps going up, and that's just claims. Talking to different insurance brokers and everything like that, they say that there's just too many claims being made throughout the country, especially now with the wildfires in California and everything. They do not expect those rates to drop at all. They expect that the premiums for next year will be even higher because of all the natural disasters we've been seeing. You'll see our budget for tuition. Now that's going to be charter school, but also it's going to be some of our private placements and special needs students. You'll see an increase in the budget there. Once again, that's a number that's a little hard to forecast until we get more information a little bit later in the year. Once again, we're going to go with a conservative number there. Breaking those down a little bit deeper, we're talking about the tuition. you can see what makes up that change. See, like I said, we had about $400,000 increase. You can see that our budget is pretty, actually the same right now for charter school because we don't really see growth in that at the moment. We're actually seeing a little bit of decrease still in the cyber charter school at the moment. And then the non-hubs is up some based on forecasts, once again, conservative number there. And you'll see the other areas. So it's a breakdown of where we're going with the budget on that. And that's really trend analysis, once again, giving people months to really hone that number in. So future considerations, what are we still looking for? On the revenue side, obviously monitor the local revenue sources, the real estate tax collection percentages, the earned income and transfer taxes. Like I said, have not dropped off, so make sure that we're still comfortable with the aggressive numbers there, and to look for allowable investments to maximize the returns. So we don't just sit and save as account, we look to maximize that value, once again, to help out the budget there. And then the state, federal funds, the state budget, like I said, we're not looking at significant increases, but we can see if there's any changes there. And then the federal programs applications, like I mentioned earlier, we'll look at that in April or May, what applications are. And then each month we keep looking at the tax assessment adjustments that come in. For expenditures, we'll keep reviewing our positions and factoring in retirements, looking at the medical benefit trends. Hopefully they get better in the near future. Cyber school, charter school costs with cyber enrollment changes. And then special education costs and individual student needs. That's one of the harder ones to really project. And the closer we get to the year, the more information we have. We don't want to run the risk of not having enough there, and then, you know, if you're not going to not provide services, right? You're going to provide services, and we make sure we don't run deficit because of that. And continue looking at our 5-year forecast. Like I said, the importance of the academic index and projections of lower rates in the future. We do not want to be pushing stuff off, kicking the can down the road. We want to make sure we take care of things now so we don't get jammed up later. We talked about the debt service for many, many months now. You know, especially with the new projects, a lot of people are wondering how does that impact taxes. We want to show that in the last school year, our actual debt service, that's the interest and principal payments on the debt for our prior projects, was just under $12 million. This current year's forecast is just over $11 million. So you see there was some savings in this year's budget. And then you look at the first wave of borrowings for the future projects, right? The 3 that are starting, the ball fields, everything like that. Right now, those are locked in numbers for what we borrow. However, we expect it to be closer to about $10.5 million once we finish borrowing. So we have a little bit of a reprieve the next year or so, but our debt service, even if we're done borrowing for the 3 projects and the ball field, will still be less than it was this year, which is less than it was last year. So, well, it sounds too good to be true. It is because we have quick amortization, and the district is very responsible when we accept this debt to pay off the high school and the other projects we've done in the past. So we have the ability. That's also why we timed these renovations when we did to fit in there, so we have minimal impact to the taxpayers. So the big grand reveal, the budgetary overview. We showed it this way last year. We showed last year's final budget, where we ended up. And the good news is last year for 23-24, we had actually adopted a budget with a deficit of $1.9 million. We actually came in at just under $1.6 million. So that was a positive variance. That was very good. That's helped us with our credit rating. We see the turnaround. Not only is it better than what we budgeted, but also it's significantly less than we had in prior years. So that's important. The next important phase was this year we adopted a zero, a no deficit use. So we did the balanced budget, and that is the goal for this year as well. So you'll see some examples down below of different tax increases, what that would generate right now in revenue compared to the expenses, to give the board some guidance of what we need to do to get down to close that gap. You'll see at the actual index increase would be $5.7 million. That will not be the case come June when we adopt the budget. So while it looks scary, we've seen years like this and actually worse in prior years, it's been higher than much. So, you know, I want to instill confidence that we're going to work very hard in the next 3 months, the next 90 days to get to a balanced budget with a reasonable tax increase. You know, we have to pay for what we're spending, obviously, but you know, we got a lot of work to do, but we're confident we're going to get there. And then budget calendar. So we gave the overview tonight. Next month we present the proposed final budget, which is a state requirement. The requirement for that is it has to be adopted at least 30 days prior to your final budget. So we actually do it even earlier. So instead of that full meeting early in May, we do it at the April meeting. What that does is we put everything in the budget document form from the state. That's made available to the public to kind of see where we're looking to spend money.
and then still between that proposed final budget that gets adopted in April, the final budget, June, we still want to work with you. Like I said, we won't be at a balanced budget come April, but come June, we will be. And then we'll give an update in the May Finance Committee meeting. June, we'll give another update, presenting the final budget, and then at the June regular board meeting, we were asking for adoption of the budget for next year. So I tried to go through that expeditiously, because I know everybody wants to get home, but I think that question's important.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor, thank you very much. Very consistent, couple call outs. The board has asked Mr. Taylor to say, how do we accelerate the deficit? And every year he's done a good job. It is an exact science, if you will. You don't just arbitrarily say, how about $1 million less this time? It doesn't work that way, as Mr. Taylor will tell you. So I appreciate the hard work you've done, as does the board administration. Some call outs, and I'll defer questions to my board members here. One is variability. You heard about it, whether it's the Fed rate, whether it's the earned income tax, whether it's the real estate tax, whether it's the cost of goods and services. There's 1,000 variables in there, so the next 90 days are tough. Mr. Taylor also alluded that sometimes we don't get billing from our suppliers until after the budget is adopted. It's not a linear. You spent $1 last month, you can't guarantee it's $1 the following month. So you have to guesstimate a little bit. And that's not a Sarah thing, a Pennsylvania thing. That's a national thing. It's one of the challenges in school budgeting, a little different in corporate finance for sure, but the end result is the same. We talked a lot about special ed. Special ed costs are rising. We brought Mrs. Lai back down years ago from the northern region. We brought her down because she's very good at what she does, and she's still excellent and beyond reproach and excellent in what she does as well. Now, the point is, it is something Sarah won't back down from. We are going to meet those needs. It's not easy, folks. I wish I could say it was. I wish I could say it was a lot less work. But between the variability, trying to predict what the cost is going to be, it's all driven by what we foresee through Mrs. Wybeck's efforts our students are going to need. It's not an exact science, but we are kind of focused on making sure that we meet the needs of our special ed students, our regular ed students, and our high achievers as well. So that's some of the variability I want you to consider over the next 90 days as we go through this process. It is far from easy, but a lot of work to be done. And as you can see, there's a lot to unpack. Mr. Taylor, is there anything else you want to call out before we turn it over for questions? We'll get to the questions. Sounds good. What's that?
Yes, thank you for that comprehensive overview and for your overview. It's a lot of work here, and I appreciate that. And it is an estimate, and you're very good at that. So thank you for starting out at the highest level, and we're going to roll away with that to bring it down. So thank you for that. And I like the graph that you show with the budget increases over the years, because it puts it into perspective for us, because we have been many, many years under backlog. And that is cumulative. So thank you for doing that. Special ed, unfortunately, it is coming up, and there isn't anything we can do about it. And like you said, no child left behind. We want to educate the whole child, and we'll continue to do that because that's what we do here at Saturday. So your students will be taken care of and educated in all areas. I don't have any specific questions. I do, again, have confidence that you will whittle away at this budget and get it to a better place for us to digest in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, you have one of the most difficult jobs and important jobs on this budget, and you always do a very good job. Somehow you seem to enjoy it, as a matter of fact. But it's really too early to comment because the budget was a lot like this last year, and you ended up getting zeroed out, and we had a balanced budget. So, because there's just too many unknowns at this point, to really dig into questions and look at anything specific. Some of it's estimates, and a whole lot of it's guesstimates. So I'm going to refrain from any questions. Look at John.
Well, I agree with what Bill and Janet said. Regardless if your student is in a cyber charter school, special needs, in regular public school, we're going to fight for you and make sure you get what you need. So it is what it is, and we're just going to make sure that we have the funds. And I know this is going to be changing on a daily basis. So I understand that, and I appreciate you literally working hour by hour for this. So thank you.
Any comments? All right, so down towards the end, Nick.
No comments, just a big thank you. Continue the good work. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks again for putting all this together and organizing it and keep track of course. But once again, we're looking at what a 10% increase in the special ed, cost to the district. And the increase from the state is what, it's under 5%, right? 4.something%. That's a lot of money. And I know I say it, whenever I can at the meetings. Just like we sit here and we're going over a budget, and you were here because you were concerned and you want to make sure that that money is being spent where you need it. The governor's doing the same exact thing. He's got to, the budget in this state, I think, is close to $50 billion. There is money that can be spent towards this. They're just allocating it for something else. Please, your concerned citizens, contact your local House representatives and your local senators and talk to them. Because just like you can put pressure on us to watch every penny, we need to do the same thing for them. Because I can guarantee you there's money in the state that's being spent on something that's potentially not as important as the needs of these children. So, take it to that next level and see if we can squeeze. It doesn't have to be that much. There's money there, and if we don't call and we don't write them letters and we're not at their meetings and we're not asking them, they're going to assume that that money's either not needed or you agree with everything they're spending the money on, and we don't really know what that is. So please, take your time and reach out to them or, contact them. We're fortunate because I believe that our local representatives are listening to us. And if you talk to them, potentially, but take that step and let them know there's a need. And the louder we get, the more they're going to have to listen. Because like I said, there is money there, and that little bit, when it trickles down to us, will make a big difference. We do a lot with that money. So please, once again, take your time and your efforts and push it there before that budget gets, approved. Okay? But thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I know this is a tedious process. I appreciate the effort you put in. I do like to, and we've mentioned this before, I do like the fact that you've been keeping us informed each month, breaking down the revenue sources, breaking down the expenses. I think that's a really good way to do it, so everybody kind of understands both sides of the equation and where the money is coming from and what it's being spent on. And it is still a living, breathing document at this point. It's going to move, and just like you said, there's the uncertainty from the Fed with the interest rates. If interest rates come down, we lose some of the investment return, but maybe that triggers housing sales and transfer taxes go up, and so there's a lot of moving parts. I appreciate the presentation of those things.
Before we turn it over, I'm going to give Mr. Taylor a plug. I apologize. Mr. Taylor mentioned a couple of years ago our financial partners were very good to us. And if you look 4 or 5 years ago, $150,000 in interest. It's nice, we'll take it, but now we're at $2 million in interest. They did knock on our door and say, we'd like to give you more money, Saracen. Mr. Taylor knocked on their door and said, what are you going to do for us? Because there's other partners that are interested. So a little extra credit there, sir, for doing that. I think we could have left $500,000 at least in one given year on the table if he didn't jump. So credit where credit's due. To our public, comments, questions, please.
I have a question. What did the comprehensive study cost us?
Comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
The comprehensive plan cost us for services, I don't know.
If you want to come up afterwards, we can get information, we can get a brief back out to the background, Jeff?
So I'm looking here at the other purchase services and tuition slide here, and to me the thing that's standing out is the word private schools. What kind of private schools are we looking at, and is it guaranteed that none of these private schools are religious schools because the Constitution of the state prohibits that?
So those are mostly placements that we have for students, and we do not place them in religious schools. We place them in schools of their need. services that they need, and those are all contractually obligated placements.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I think it would be helpful if the 24-25 column was a projection for the year versus year to date. You could just create a better flow to see where you expect this year to end up compared to where you're budgeting next year.
Sure, let me clarify one thing, Mr. Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't disagree with you. I think one of the challenges we might see, not saying we won't do that, is we will see some of our bills come in after June, after we adopt. So if we're in May or April, for example, that number won't be exactly where it will be June 30th, by example. So there will still be some variability in that. Mr. Taylor, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to fine tune. Like each month we go through and I do this for a number of years now, that we make projections, and each month I get closer to project where we get to the end of the year. You're more accurate as each month goes on. That's why I'm saying there's still some, predictability. That's the little hesitation I have putting my projection in there right now is next month my projection is going to be fine because it's going to be different. And so what I show is I show where we are year to date compared to last year to date. So you can kind of make your own assumptions and say, hey, last year we finished at $1 million, and right now we're 5% or 10% ahead of that in spending. Then you can maybe make your own assumptions. But I don't want to put out there a projection that, like I said, this far out in advance isn't very accurate. Right? And if I go back a month before, I look at projections every month. And the first 3 or 4 months, my projections wildly change because you might have one expenditure that comes in a month earlier, a month late, and that really skews things. So yes, that is something we take into account as we're preparing our budget each month, but those projections get wildly different until we get up into about the April, May time frame. But that is something that we can look to include. Like you said, it would be helpful for people to see that.
And also, if you're here for the next couple of months, you'll see that grow, and those numbers change each and every month as one gets reported in. Appreciate it.
Speaking of construction, there is so much new construction going on. How long does it take the county to make it to schools?
So there's a couple components to that, right? There's the transfer tax when the property is sold, right? So there's a transfer tax, and we get that monthly, we get whatever's been recorded. So if it's at the rate of the month, we may not make it until the following month. The recorder deeds from Montgomery County sends us that, it sends a report and a check every month. So now, once again, there's not like a baseline because it's a one-time transaction for a transfer tax. It's not like real estate taxes we have growing on the assessments, right? So, there's years you can go down, right? So we get that monthly. Now, the other things I think increase are interim taxes, right? So if somebody sells a house just to somebody, you get a transfer tax, whether it's new construction or anything. But when it's new construction, usually that property is assessed at the land. So it gets assessed at $25,000, and now it's assessed at $300,000 when the house is completely sold. So you also get the change in assessments from that. That's where the interim billing comes in. So we can do an interim bill during that year, and then the following year, from July 1, that increased assessment's already calculated in the taxes. So some of it will be correct. So you can get that one-time transfer tax payment during the year, you can get that one-time interim billing during the year, but then the growth of assessments would grow, consistently each year after that.
Final comments or questions, folks? I know the numbers are exciting. All right, anything else? All right, that's all we have for tonight. Thanks for coming out and joining us. Have a good evening.
Maybe I'll get it tomorrow.